Annie, bonjour, bienvenue, bonsoir, welcome to Massey College. My name is Nathalie Desrosiers and I'm the principal of Massey College. It's so wonderful to have you all here to hear a wonderful alumni of Massey College, Eve Egoyan, and I think we're so delighted to have another fabulous music salon at Massey College. So welcome for being here. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that Massey College is built on Indigenous lands, the lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and it is the treaty land of the Mississaugas of the Credit. And we always want to acknowledge the great privilege that we have to continue to be here together to celebrate this great land and the stewardship that we have to exercise toward this land. So tonight my role is very limited, except to say welcome, and it's so wonderful to be all together again, being able to celebrate the world of music. And I will pass it to Michael Barkley, who is a William Southern journalism with us last year or 2 years ago, and a specialist in music history. And we're so happy to have you here again, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for coming to the second of our music salons. I interviewed Tom Wilson last month, and we have a couple of great ones coming up in February, March that I'll tell you about later, but let's talk about what's happening right now. Did you go to Massey College? That's not in my bio here. Okay, that's crazy. All right. We're here to talk to and celebrate Eve Egoyan, who is an internationally celebrated Armenian-Canadian artist who, to simplify things, plays the piano, but so much more than that. She trained in classical repertoire initially in Victoria, British Columbia, then in Banff, Berlin, and London, before earning her master's degree here, which was news to me. She has recorded 12 solo CDs, mostly featuring works which she commissioned from a huge variety of composers, both Canadian and international, including the late Anne Southam, Canadian minimalist electroacoustic pioneer. She has performed as a solo artist across Canada and throughout Europe, Asia, and Australia. She's one of 50 performers given the designation of Canadian Music Centre Ambassador. She began working with new technologies in 2009 when the Open Ears Festival, that was in Waterloo, is that where that went? Yeah. Commissioned Surface Tension for Disclavier and Interactive Visuals, a collaboration with media artist David Rokeby. Her latest project, which came out last month, I think, Hopeful Monster. It's a collaboration with Vancouver-based composer Maurizio Paoli. It just came out, and one of my favorite websites, Bandcamp, chose it as their best contemporary classical music album. Our questioner, our griller, our interlocutor tonight is Hannah Chan-Hartley, who helps put these music salons together with myself and others. Is a musicologist who specializes in communicating about music to audiences in engaging and innovative ways. She's active as a writer, speaker, program book editor, and instructor with orchestras and other organizations in Canada, US, and Europe. She has been musicologist in residence at the Verbier Festival since 2018 and was previously managing editor and musicologist at the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Hannah created the award-winning visual listening guides launched in 2015 and since then have been used and enjoyed by audiences in 22 countries worldwide. Last summer, she debuted a companion augmented reality app for the guides, which melds the printed guide with digital content to engage audiences in orchestra's work. So without further ado, Hannah Chan-Hartley speaking with Eve Egoyan. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Michael, for that introduction, and to Natalie for your land acknowledgement. And welcome, Eve. Welcome back to Massey College.
Thank you. I loved my years here, so I'm very happy to be here again.
We were talking earlier, and I was thinking about the fact that earlier this afternoon I was actually listening to the In-Concert Hall of Fame, where you were the new inductee I guess it was this summer, as hosted by Paolo Pietropalo. And I was listening to it, and I was thinking, it gave such a wonderful overview of what you call your interpretive work. And that program ends with the first excerpt that I would like to play tonight. And as a way of introducing what you call your creative work, we're going to emphasize your most recent creative work with augmented piano and an acoustic piano. So I figured I want to play this first before I get you to tell anything about it. Okay. So this excerpt is called Ghosts Beneath My Fingertips for Viva from 2021. That was beautiful. I wanted to show this first and then have you, there's many ways we can go about this, but maybe let's talk about what this piece was about, and also, obviously you could see that there's an apparatus on the piano. Describe that and what you're doing with that in this piece.
Yes, so there's a lot actually to say, I realize that. So this piece was called Ghost Beneath My Fingertips for Viva. Viva is our daughter's name, and you hear her voice in this piece. Ghost Beneath My Fingertips is because I'm Armenian of descent, and this piece that I wrote was exploring some Armenian folkloric music. And this was premiered, it was supposed to be during COVID, and it was performed at Kerner Hall not so long ago. The apparatus, there's a lot to say. So I'm known mostly as an interpreter. Prior to COVID, I had a residency at Avatar in Quebec City to work with a programmer there to help me develop this instrument that I imagined. So I love playing the acoustic piano, but like a lot of instrumentalists, but piano in particular, you sometimes wish that the piano could do things it can't do. And so I wanted to duet the piano with its imagined self. In this particular piece, though, I'm using samples, which means it's pre-recorded. It's not the other piano, which you'll hear later. So I recorded my daughter's voice. You hear Armenian folkloric instruments. So that's what you're hearing, so alongside. And in a weird way, COVID allowed me the opportunity to spend more time with my own creative work. It's weird for me just to know that I actually wrote that piece, and I keep writing music, but I split my time now between interpretive work and creative work, and I'm working with other artists as well. So the apparatus I'm using, so originally I was using a disc clavier, which is an acoustic piano, am I talking loudly enough, with a computer interface. Oh, sure, yeah. So the disc clavier is a remarkable instrument, but they're very hard to find. So on tour, basically, it would be whether a piano dealer had one that I could actually perform with this instrument. And so I kind of got fed up with it. And when I was on tour in the UK, one of my presenters said, "Have you ever, reached out to the Augmented Instrument Laboratory in London?" And I did. And they had this thing, which is called a piano scanner, which was on that Steinway at Kerner Hall. It's totally non-invasive. You put it. I can tour with it. I mean, it's tricky, but I can set it up myself. But what it is this. It tracks the movement of the keys. It's an optical sensor. There's like these little lights that go down, and I have to put a little tape on every black key so that it reflects light as well. So I use an optical sensor now instead of a disc clavier in order to so that I have digital information that can be transformed either into image or into sound. So that's what you're seeing, and it allows me to tour with it, and it takes about an hour to set up. And so that's what I do now alongside my other work, which is interpretive.
Oh, and just thinking there's more.
Yeah.
There's also a little pad on the, and what does that part do?
My fingers are, I'm also, so there's a little pad. It's not that big a deal. It just means I'm changing my, it's called a Rolly light box. It's like, it changes like whatever, like let's say whatever sample I want. If I want my daughter's voice, if I want Duduk, if I want whatever, centaur, whatever, like anything like Kanun, and for the model piano, so I have that, and what you don't see, I also have two extra pedals on my left side. So a pianist has 3 pedals, but I have 2 extra ones, and one of them is is a volume pedal, so I could bring in or out the effect, I guess, and the other one is like degree of. So with the model piano, for example, if I'm doing if the model piano is doing what seems like a vibrato, I can change, for example, the speed of the vibrato, or pitch bend. I can make it go up and down from the. You'll hear this eventually, but my feet are quite busy, and my left foot. Yeah, so that's why the shoe is on the side, because I play my left foot and bare feet. Because
Okay.
it's a bit strange to walk on stage, take off the shoe, then put it back on for the bow. That's the most uncomfortable part.
And this particular piece is actually like, is it a full score? Like, did you write it out? Okay, in terms of, it's not improvised.
No,
Okay.
for Kerner Hall, that was interesting because I knew it was that type of venue. I wrote everything.
Okay.
But the model piano is always improvised.
Okay.
I don't notate. So as far as like the pitches I'm playing, it's notated.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. I thought I'd go back to 2009, back to when you began working with these new technologies. And Michael, I mentioned in your bio the commissioned work, Surface Tension, with media artist David Rokeby. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, just sort of to introduce the next clip, which is an excerpt from Orbits. I think it's Orbits,
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So Surface Tension was commissioned by Peter Hatch, who came to us, and so David is actually my husband as well. He asked us if we had ever collaborated, and we hadn't, except for having a child together. And we were a bit nervous about it, but actually it was really wonderful to work together. And actually we worked at Massey College for part of the time in like beneath the masters. Because it was really wonderful because I didn't have a place to put a disc clavier. Yamaha gave me a disc clavier to rehearse on, but I had no place. So Massey housed it so that we could work on it. So I forgot about that till I was here. So thank you. Yes. So these are touch triggered real time. So David created a visual environment for me to work within. There are 5 movements with this piece, but nothing is fixed. So touch stimulates image, but I'm in duet with it. I understand that within the 5 pieces there are certain parameters it's responsive to, whether it's harmonics or other, like orbit will be about like distances between, like certain resonances, like the 5th will create a certain type of so if they're perfect intervals, they will create more, I guess, circular, and if it's more chromatic, then you'll see they become a bit more busy. So each of these, so I practiced them, but the actual performances are at this moment still improvised.
Okay.
And I think it would be, because I'm actually looking at the image at the same time as well, so it is a visual partner.
Okay. Let's, before we talk more about that, let's watch an excerpt
Sure.
of this.
but it's interesting. Yeah. So.
The synchronization is even tighter. There's a delay on the video, so the things are happening right when she performs.
Yeah, and that what was interesting. I mean, so this is at the end of so the last excerpt was from a piece called Solo for Duet, but this isn't actually okay. And the last sound you were hearing actually that was coming from the augmented piano. So that was the first time you've heard the model piano doing harmonic overtones. So even though it was both, it was a combination of the two right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why it sounds different.
I'm curious with this kind of work, how do you, because it's improvised, right? Are you responding to the visuals?
Yeah.
How do you impose a structure on, or is there a structure?
No, it's because you practice it in a weird way.
Okay.
So like I think for me, within the context of a lot of these things, it's duration. Like sometimes people will say they want half an hour surface tension, or they want an hour-long surface tension. So I know that there are 5 movements, and then I'll practice, and I'll get used to a feeling of a duration.
Oh, okay. So actually somebody will ask you for a duration.
Yeah.
They can recommend one, or they can say,
Yeah.
we want this for it. Oh, okay. That's very interesting. And in the moment, what are you experiencing, or how are you? I'm just curious about the creative
It's actually
process
very
here.
difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Like even as a musician, not to feel like the visual overwhelms my sense of hearing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like so that sometimes I get a bit stunned looking at the image, and I'm not as responsive. Yeah, which is it's a drag. Like so, it's actually disappointing for myself that I like many people image will become forefronted to sound.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Just thinking if there's how to expand on this. Have you done more visual work?
Yes. So actually, right now I'm working with an animator, Christopher Hinton. He extraordinary. And we're doing this. So this is different because it will be fixed. We're doing touch-triggered animations. So we're like we do this thing back and forth. It's like sort of an improvisation, but the score will be fixed and the images will be fixed. So he will give me 30 seconds or so of image. I write the music. I give him 30 seconds more of sound. He gives me the image, and then I stitch them together. So the score is fixed, and also whatever visuals happen will always be like, if it's always, I don't know, like for middle C, there'll always be that image at that time. So it's totally different, and it will be something that's repeatable.
Oh, that's okay. So compared to some of this other stuff.
Instead of surface tension.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Which is not as,
Yeah.
which every performance is different anyways, but in this case,
We wildly different.
Right.
Because surface tension varies both image and sound, whereas
Right.
the new project we're creating together, and it will be triggered in time. The reason I wanted to do this project, for a lot of musicians, when you're working with image, you have something called a click track in your ear, which is just this tick, 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 and it's what binds sound and image. And it's really disruptive for a performer because you're not hearing your instrument in real time, you're not responding to your acoustic space. So this crazy project with Christopher, which is quite a complicated technical project, is because I want it to be able to play freely, but that it will always be this, yes, you know what I mean, that in time I can respond to how I'm feeling and not have this thing telling me what to do in order for it to be synchronized.
Okay.
It will always be synchronized, but always through touch.
Okay. Do you find that, do you prefer more structure or less structure in terms, or these parameters? Do you feel that you like to be more free with what you are expressing in the moment, or does it matter? Because
They're very different.
Very different, yeah.
There's something about knowing what the outcome will be and practicing that, and sort of being comfortable in that. Like, so if I write a piece of music, I know that I've made a decision, and yes, I've made a decision. Improvisations can lead me to places that I've never been before and won't be able to return to, which is also interesting too.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Do you ever wish, how often are these works recorded, or is it just this ephemeral, in the moment experience?
I don't think it's worthwhile writing down improvisation.
Okay, right. But even just a video recording of something is not really.
Yeah.
That's a kind of
It's a record.
a record of
just
it.
like one of the
Right.
things that we talked about
Yeah.
later. Yes.
Let's move to I guess, to a different work, which also has improvisation in it, and it's an excerpt from Women in Space Festival.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that excerpt, the excerpt we're going to play?
Yes. So here I was asked to perform an hour-long improvisation for this festival, and it was during COVID. It was quite amazing, actually. They did these little, what do you call these little theaters that you could. What was those? What was that little? It was a hologram. So you'd get these. Everyone who had a ticket had to take home holographic theater. And so your performer would be on stage with you. It was amazing.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so it was a really, really interesting project. So I was filmed in studio, and then people watched it in their homes on their own little theaters. I decided, because this was early days with the model piano, that I would go, in my improvisation, I had a structure of like which ones I would go through, and approximately, again, I practiced what type of parameters I wanted to explore during my improvisation. So it was somewhat structured, but also free. Nothing was written, but I had practiced it. So, and what I think you're going to be hearing is the thing that is being explored through the augmented piano here is harmonic overtones are being revealed per pitch. Now, what is really cool about the optical sensor versus a disc clavier is a disc clavier responds to touch. The optical sensor has a space, because it's about like light and motion, it has a little gap before you make a sound on the piano where you're actually activating the optical sensor. So I can play for the first time I've always imagined this, air piano. So I can move my fingers, and you can hear, and I could decide when to play a piano note. So it's kind of like, it's almost like you already can imagine. Like I'm playing, and then occasionally I'm going deep into the water and I'm making a sound. So I can make other sounds by, tickling, I guess, the optical sensor's tracking, and then pick pitches underneath that.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at this excerpt. For that particular piece where you I was curious about this Women in Space Festival. Were you responding to a theme, or this was a completely separate?
That's what the festival is called.
Oh, that was okay. But was
Oh.
the piece that you the improvisation that you were doing, was that in response to the theme or this festival's
Well,
theme?
actually, I just decided. Well, it was kind of wonderful to be invited to play an hour-long improvisation with. Nobody had ever asked me to do that. So I thought, and it was just kind of like, wow, okay, just do it.
So in a way, it's sort of like a more abstract way of thinking of women in space. Like,
no,
not just like I guess the literal thing of women in space.
No, because
but
it's women, and they're allowing for experimentalists.
Yeah. What a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward. This is from 2021. Was this? I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and so now we're in 2023, and we're going to talk about your recent release, Hopeful Monster. Here is the the CD, and this is a new collaboration between you and the multi-instrumentalist Maurizio Paoli. Could you talk a bit about this project? I know that you've just taken it on tour. Did it start off as a recording project, or how did it start?
Very strange. I mean, I think everything I do is really strange. It was upside down. So a friend of ours. Anne Bourne, a wonderful improvising cellist based in Toronto, said to me, "Oh, there's this guy from the UK who I just really think that you should meet, and he's coming through Toronto with his gear." So he came to my studio with Anne, and the three of us improvised. And I came home and I was super excited. Like I just thought, wow, I just felt like so at home with this person's sound world, which is not normal. Anyway, and then he went to Vancouver, where he has a job at SFU, and he's married there with a wonderful composer. And we got in touch with each other. COVID happened. So we decided that we would start just sending things back and forth to each other. Like he would send me some stuff, I would respond, we'd send it back. And we put together a grant through these weird back and forth things. But in the meantime, because he works at SFU, he said, "Eve, just come. It's summertime, we have space. Come for 4 days, let's play and record." And he's very, like, we had a great sound engineer, and a video recorder, like he had all this. And in the meantime, we found out we received the funding. So we are in studio and we improvised for these days, 3 days. And then, so this is just the total opposite of composed music or a released CD. So, and then we decided, and we distilled from those sessions about 60 minutes of music that we pieced together onto this album, which has now just crazily been reviewed for classical composition. So yes, we both think compositionally, but these pieces were improvised, but they were selected and made into, like, how do you say that, contextualized as though they were compositions, but we'll never be able to play them again. So it was a bit confusing to know where we actually sit in the world of concert music, because both of us, we come from concert music. He comes also from, I guess, not so, like, because he uses all this technology, but still he writes concert music. I am playing the piano, but the piano has now been transposed into another type of instrument that can play with electronic instruments. So it becomes a kind of a hybrid that is really unusual. But it was kind of a remarkable sound world, which we both feel very comfortable within, and it's new. So, yes.
It raises so many interesting questions in terms of what.
Raises a lot of interesting questions.
Like what is composed, improvised, what's,
and what do people want to hear? I mean, that Bandcamp, this reviewer who's extremely critical, picked it. It's confusing to me a little bit. I mean, I'm honored, but, I play a lot of composed music. So, I mean, but you could also say that, both of us come with a history of composed music, and we are mature musicians, and coming together, we created this world, and then we made a selection. It's almost like a, what do you call those, like cutouts, right? That you, like you've made, so we just cut out, and we said that's a piece. Like it's a ready-made, right? It basically comes from that time of, it's a ready-made piece. It's found.
did you, I like that, it's found.
Yeah.
How did you decide what to select?
We listened. And we had like favorites. We actually listened independently, and then there were certain ones that we both liked, and then we refined them, and then we gave them to somebody who was mixed them in New York, and we said to him, and we kind of made fake well, not fake. We didn't. There was no edits to the disc, but we just made intros, entrances and exits that sounded like they were somewhat finished. And then we arranged it like curatorially. We just, moved them together to make a disc. And people have become very accustomed to the disc, and some people found coming to hear our improvisations on tour confusing because they expected to hear the disc. But they're never going to hear the disc. So, but then some people were really excited because they understood what they were going to hear, and they were blown away by the live performances because they finally could see what was going on. Because sometimes when we're playing, it's hard to know who's doing what.
Oh, okay.
Because we move very much inside each other's sound.
So if you're playing just wrapping my head around this, if you're playing something from the disc, say for example, we're going to show you the one Dialing with Abandon in live performance. What are the things? Is there anything that someone could pick out? Or say, I heard that on the disc, and
because I mean, we both. What's interesting is, I've kind of made a bespoke piano. So there's the piano, but there's a bunch of sounds that I want to hear, and those are the buttons.
Okay.
Okay. And he has the same thing. Like, he has all these doodads, but they're all things that he's picked because he wants to hear them. So it's his bespoke instrument, plus he has like an auto harp. So he has some acoustic instruments as well as non-acoustic, and I have acoustic piano plus non-acoustic piano. So that's where we layer.
Okay. Before we show this, we're actually going to show the entire piece, Dialing with Abandon, from the disc. So you record. So this is the video recording of this
in studio.
In the studio, right?
And it's actually very strange for us to see it because we never looked at each other ever. And I think also we didn't really know who was doing what sometimes. So we recorded it. This is also so strange. So in recording, we actually didn't hear ourselves acoustically. So the digital information, so we both, like I said, have acoustic as well as digital. We were playing with headphones on. So we never actually heard each other in real space until the beginning of our tour.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like we jumped off a cliff a couple times. So we jumped off a cliff by going right into recording, and then we jumped off a cliff by going right into touring, never having played live together. But nothing went wrong. Okay, so, yeah.
Is there anything you want to say about this particular piece before we introduce? Or do we? Okay, let's play Dialing with Abandon. Turn it up. I was thinking while experiencing that I feel like I need a whole new vocabulary to describe. Like I've got my musicologist hat on. A whole vocabulary to describe what is going on there. As we said, it sort of blurs so many boundaries, or we can't quite articulate. Well, it's not. It's what's the structure, what's improvised, what's not, what's composed. I love this aspect of found, that you found these pieces. Did the titles come with that, or did you just decide after you had found those particular? They came after, yeah. And I was thinking, like, there's something about the music that is very, I don't know, that forces you to become present with the sound. So you're actually enjoying or contemplating, reflecting on the actual sounds that you hear. And yeah, in a way, there's sort of a freedom in that as a listener, at least for me.
No, and as a player too. I mean, so when I think when I was improvising with Maurizio, first of all, I really liked the quality of his sounds. I mean, because a lot of electronic sounds could be, I don't know, I just liked the world that he had picked. And I guess he liked the world that I was picking. And then coming together, we feel it's a familiar landscape. Like every time I start with him, which is really weird, and even in live, like we just sit down, we play. We are comfortable. And so that is just a rare meeting of two musicians from totally different landscapes, and yet there is this, there's so many layers. Yeah. And I think I'm trying to create more layers at the piano with my own thing, and he is, but then together we're like broadening it even further. And I have this landscape, like we just have a lot of range. Yeah. I can sort of feel that. Yeah. I figured we've got time for questions, actually. So if any of you are interested in asking Eve about her creative work, that would be great. If you could come up to the microphone here in order to record. We can hear it on the recorded recording. Yeah. Oh no, you have to. Oh, there's that one.
On the second piece that we saw, you talked about the possibility of being potentially overwhelmed by the visuals. Do you ever play that music with your eyes closed?
More so now, because I understand the parameters. Yeah, so I mean, it's because I understand what will be happening visually somewhat, so I can check in. And I can also, it's also just a practice. It's a division of the brain, and just trying to constantly to make sure that they're both. It's tiring, but it's possible to do both at the same time.
I was going to ask again about that visual. I saw that the setup was almost with a drape. On the side, very elegant, like almost magical. And I was wondering whether you imagined that in the future, young people would be attracted to that way of expression. I just took my step-grandchild to the TSO yesterday, and he's 5 years old. It was not completely worth it. So he's listening to the music, and then he's watching the lights. And there was a certain way in which they're more visual. I felt he was more visual than I ever was. And so I was thinking about whether that new setup of having the drape around your piano and playing and imagining the music would be a way of teaching music in which that might be.
For a lot of people, not just children, it's very hard to hear music, or some people have difficulty listening. And so for a lot of people, surface tension was actually a way of approaching music or sound more closely. We had conversations, I guess I didn't expect that because I am a sound person, but yes, it was an aid. And the drape that you're seeing was actually that particular movement was part of a performance called Solo for Duet, where it was specifically created as a theatrical experience. So I had a director and everything. It was premiered at Luminato, and it was challenging me to be, I mean, obviously I'm visual on stage, but it was challenging me to be, overtly visual on stage. Yeah, there were some extremely performative pieces, and often I was going towards that screen so that it was brought in to the performance. and that's a very magical movement too. The one where I'm triggering the movement of snow, through my touch. So yes, and also for either hearing impaired people as well, to have the visualization of music is also an important thing. Yes.
What made you decide to break, and I use that word specifically, from what we think of as music traditionally into this whole new world of sound and visuals, and what was it?
Probably a combination of things. Both my parents are visual artists. My brother is a visual artist. The sound thing, I think it happened when I realized, well, after I was triggering image, I realized, well, that this could be also for sound. And the piano, even though it's an infinite place of playground for me, because I still play normal piano. So, it's, I just thought, well, it's, why not, if it's possible to expand it. But, the truth is that we have become accustomed to instruments as they are. But in the old days, when instruments were hand-built, people made them to their specifications. So in a weird way, I'm making the piano to my specifications, which is actually very old-fashioned. Just like actually performers were also improvisers and composers. It's very old-fashioned. We've become much more, well, the practices have become so stressed. I mean, if you want to be a concert pianist, truly a concert pianist, the amount of repertoire that you have to play, I don't know, it's very different. I mean, and, in instruments, people don't, well, in other cultures, yes, they're hand-built, but the piano is no longer a hand-built instrument. But yeah, so when in the old times, everything was made by hand. And so therefore, it was personalized. So I've personalized the piano, which is a kind of an odd thing, yes, to think about, but it's possible now. I always think of myself actually as like an old timer, like, because in Beethoven's time, people played Beethoven, and Rachmaninoff he played his own music. You know what I mean, like, and it just has become like it's assumed that most composers are dead now, which is not right, and that is not a living art form, but it is a living art form, and the piano can also be considered a living instrument.
Thank you very much. This is extremely imaginative territory you're moving into. While I was watching all of these various excerpts, going through my mind was, and you've touched on it a little bit, but I wish you would expand a bit more about what your intellectual and musical precursors are for this. Like, do you see yourself coming out of a tradition of experimentation, whether that was from mid-20th century or later? And then maybe the second part of that question would be, like, who do you think is doing really interesting work in this vein elsewhere, whether it's a particular lab or studio, or whether it's a university setting, or where do you situate yourself historically and then in this contemporary world as well?
Well, I think historically I sort of answered it, I believe. I mean, historically, okay, so the tradition of free improvisation exists, but this is strange because it's not within the idiom of jazz. So both of us are trying, which is sort of strange. Both of us come from a classical tradition, but I'm actually not looking for anything familiar. The moment I hit something familiar, and I have a way of trying to avoid certain harmony by playing mostly two voices, sometimes three voices, being very careful not to create what we consider traditional harmony, unless I want to actually get there, just because that's who I am. I think and I don't want to, I also don't think I could do it very well on the fly. I think to do like proper composition in harmonic tradition, I think on the fly for me is too complicated. I could do polyphonic, but I don't feel comfortable. And so the other question was, so historically, I mean, some people in some of the reviews, they talk about this, because John Cage did, break away from the piano, he prepared the instrument, which meant he puts things inside the instrument to change the sound of the historical instrument. Now, to do that on tour, nobody wants you to go inside their piano for a good reason. I mean, there are ways to do it properly without hurting an instrument, but many people unfortunately have done things to instruments that are not good. Like they've put white out on, like it's just not, they've done not good things. So I suppose, but this interface that I use, it doesn't approach the strings at all. So it's a way of, it's not preparing the instrument, but it is transforming its sound, sort of, but not actually. It's just superimposing something else on top of it. I don't know if that answers your question. Does it answer your question?
Where do you find this kind of
Where do I
work being done
find?
elsewhere?
Well, that's interesting too. So my choices for how I'm exploring the piano are through touch, because I don't want to, I love playing the acoustic piano. A lot of people who are exploring keyboards will also have like a lot of synthesizers on the side. And a lot of things are very theatrical, like, you know, you can have motion tracking and whatever, wave around. I mean, I did explore the idea of, you know, motion sensors and stuff, but I actually just thought, you know, I want it to be kind of invisible. I want it to remain magical. I don't want to be, it's not me to be, you know, very gestural. So that's why this practice is specific, or I would say this one is, but there is a lot of, you know, motion tracking is huge right now. And there's a lot of gear that people can wear in order to create other sounds at the same time and other things. 10 minutes, okay. Yes, so I'm not sure. I'm not affiliated with academia, so I have no idea actually what's going on, unless if I see it at a festival. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell us more about your touring experience and sort of responses and encountering different communities and the kind of communities you encounter on the way, which is probably new audiences, different audiences. Maybe, of course, you have a track record, so you would probably encounter familiar faces as well. But
yeah, and some people are not. So this is, I guess this is post-COVID. You're talking about this stuff? Yeah, so pre-COVID, my reputation is as an interpreter of pre-existing works or works that have been written for me. So some people are not really happy that I've moved in this way, and some people are thrilled that I'm moving in this way, but it's not, I'm not moving away from what I've done. I'm just incorporating new things. The most recent tour, like the most recent tour, which was Hopeful Monster, was interesting because, as you can imagine, for this type of music, how it's presented sonically is extremely important. So we had a really amazing presenter in Vancouver who situated us, so had the audience around us, and we were in the middle. I had a great Fazioli piano. They had the subwoofer, which is the low sounds in the middle, and then they had 5 stereo pairs facing the audience. So that is an extremely rich, so that's where the presenter and the sound technician become hugely part of the creative presentation of the work. Because you have, like, first of all, you have, for me, a great piano, and then you have, like, great mixing for the audience. And so the audience is all around you. And so afterwards, they were just like, all came all to the middle because they were so curious about the instruments, but that was really fun. But yeah, so every environment's different, you know, but most of the time it's just, you know, pianist and, you know, instrument is on stage, and they have like your, you know, your speakers right there forward. I don't know if that answers your question, but audiences are very different how they respond to it, like age group, like each presenter attracts their own, yeah, and there's different levels of curiosity, like in Victoria where we did it, we had the evening before we were addressing students, and we actually introduced them to the technology, and they were really excited because they had that opportunity before the performance to actually ask questions and see what we were doing, rather than just having it right on them. Yeah.
Follow up on the question about precedents and like historical precedents, and I feel like there is a long history, probably pre-Cage and post-Cage, of pushing the limits of the piano and resituating it. But of course, that's not a popular history. And I wonder if you could talk about your work with Anne Southam and kind of stories that aren't written into a lot of mainstream histories of the instrument or of minimalist music, and how you first came to that approach to piano, and those kind of people who pointed you in that direction.
To minimalist music? I played standard repertoire. When I was here at Massey College, I was studying standard repertoire, but also when I was here in Toronto, there were quite a few composers who I'd met in Victoria that had moved here. And they wrote, I guess, what you'd call, so the school that they came from, like their teacher was Rudolf Komaros, so Linda Catlin Smith, who I guess it's quiet music. I mean, when you say it's minimalist is a tricky thing, do you mean, like pattern music, I guess, is and minimalism. And then there was Alison Cameron, who also, I guess, minimalist, not maximalist. So there are a lot of the composers whose work I played early on, before I met Anne, were writing distilled music. So it wasn't really about the drama and theater of lots of piano playing, so I also play maximalist music like Michael Finnessy, who comes from the UK. So it's my practice is actually very broad. It's not just minimalist, but there is a tradition of it here. So Anne Southam was an amazing Canadian composer, and she wrote, maybe you want to just describe it as minimalist pattern music, perhaps. So, and I became, I was invited to play a piece of hers called Remembering Schubert for CBC, and it was there that I met her. And after I met her, we just really hit it off. So she wrote a lot of music for me in her later career. I released 3 discs of her music, as well as she wrote me a piano concerto, which I premiered at Massey Hall with the Toronto Symphony. So I don't know if you have any specific questions about my relationship with Anne and working relationship, but it was a really, it was an amazing, but it was difficult because she was creating for me till she died. And that was a really hard, it was such an affirming relationship when she was living, and then it was a really, I just wanted, and she died of cancer, and she would have, for sure, her life was shortened. It was not, she was not happy that was her path. So that was a very difficult ending to a creative partnership. Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Just going back to Hopeful Monster, and I think you partly answered this question. Maybe you answered as much as you could answer, but anyway, I'm just curious, when you take those pieces on the road, if you're performing, say, Dialing with Abandon.
We're not performing, we don't tour those pieces.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's the answer.
That's the answer. So they were found and put on a CD. So we salvaged them from our recordings.
Right. Okay.
And cut them, and made them pieces, and named them.
Right.
And gave them weight by naming them.
So when you tour Hopeful Monster, is it a continuous performance, sort of start to finish?
No. Well, actually,
how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think every improviser has probably that. There's all different ways of doing it. I gave him the responsibility of having the timer because the presenter says no more than an hour, or I don't know, they'll give you a defined time, like maybe you can go 50 minutes over, whatever, but they usually limit you, and I'd never wanted to look at the clock. So sometimes we just filled the hour with one piece, or sometimes we would just find that we come to an end and then we just continue. But we can unfortunately play for, we realize that we could just play for 6 hours, and maybe our ultimate performance venue would be just like everyone could just lie on the floor and come and go. Because it just spills out of us. Like it doesn't really feel, it's like you're walking down a path and you just find something else, and then you just go find another corner, and then there's, that's there, and then you just think that's what it's like.
I guess I have one follow-up question to that. Do you have any expectations of what the audience should be doing? Do you want them to be quiet and listen to you, or do you, or does it matter to you?
No, this is not, first of all, it's very loud. I would say that, as you hear, there's a lot of sound. Like if people get up and move, that's fine. And I don't think this comes from that tradition of, well, for me it wouldn't, if people moved or even or left or came and came back. That's why I was just thinking, if it were like just that people could come in and out and it was just this environment that they could come in, like, yeah. Because that's what we're doing.
So you could be in a room, say in a museum, for example, and just play for 6 hours, and people can come in and out and experience that as they. So there's that they found you in a way, like they just come in. Oh, found this.
Well, and also you might find that you love some part of it that we're not particularly interested in. I mean, there's no, in a weird way, the audience becomes participant by. That's what the beauty of real-time performance is, actually, because we are finding, and you're finding along with us what you're finding interesting or not. And nobody really, there's no judgment.
Right. Wow. Okay, I'm going to be thinking about this a lot. But I think we have to finish our salon tonight. But thank you so much, Eve, for this wonderful event. And
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you, Hannah. We have events in February and March for our music salons, and I think February is Daniel Bartholomew Poyser, the disruptor conductor. And then we have Karen Ng, one of my favorite local Toronto musicians in the improv community. You can see her at the Transact 7 nights a week and the Rex the other 7 afternoons. I don't know. Anyway, that'll be a great evening as well. Thank you all for coming. Speaking of the Rex, my friend's klezmer band is playing tonight, so you should go there after this. Thank you for coming. We'll see you in February. Thank you.
Thank you.